we are following some developing news out of New York City involving disgraced Hollywood film mogul Harvey Weinstein. In a stunning development, an appeals court in New York has thrown out that rape conviction from 2020 for Harvey Weinstein and now ordering a new trial. The appeals court basically saying the judge in the original case did not rule properly. Weinstein's legal team reacting just a short time ago, celebrating the win. Here's some of what they were saying.
But this was so much more than Harvey Weinstein for us and for the justice system, and we are relieved. Everyone's like, are you happy? Of course, we worked very, very hard, but we're relieved that our system of justice wasn't perverted. You know, this was a case about perversion. Well, in that courthouse at trial, the laws were perverted because there was so much pressure, because Harvey was the face of this movement, that he had to be convicted.
Weinstein's conviction, and in fact the accusations, did trigger the so-called Me Too movement, in which women began to speak out forcefully against powerful men in many different industries, accusing them of abusing that power, sexual assault, and rape. We have to be careful here, and let me explain to you what the Court of Appeals found. They said the original judge in that case made improper rulings, including allowing some women to testify in that case concerning allegations that were not directly connected to the case itself. With a new trial ordered, Weinstein's accusers, though, could be forced to testify again. We heard from Ashley Judd a little earlier today. She was the first actress to come forward with accusations against Weinstein. She said this decision today is unfair, and the justice system in the U.S. continues to betray survivors of male sexual violence. Listen to this.
And these are concrete practices and actions that our institutions can take to respond to workplace harassment and male sexual violence in ways that both prevent, address, and have postvention to make sure that women and all people work in environments that are free from harassment and sexual violence.
Weinstein has been serving a 23-year jail sentence in a prison in New York, but if you think he's going to be out anytime soon, think again. He is also serving a separate 16-year prison sentence for a different rape conviction, that one in California, so he will be staying behind bars. He continues to maintain his innocence. He claims any sexual activity was consensual. Harvey Weinstein is currently 72 years old. Let's go to Montreal. Erika Rosenbaum is my guest. She's a Canadian actress who accused Weinstein of sexual misconduct. Erika, thank you for taking some time for CTV today. Great to see you.
My pleasure.
Your reaction to this news from New York, a stunning bombshell here.
A bombshell indeed. It is a profoundly discouraging development, but not a surprising one, unfortunately. Survivors everywhere are well aware that our legal systems are not written or supported to convict these kinds of crimes. And I think there are huge changes that need to happen for that to be possible, because the legal system as it is just not built to convict. And so survivors go out on a limb and tell their stories and re-traumatize themselves for the sake of these trials, and then something like this happens, and it is certainly not their fault, and it will cost a great deal to have to tell those stories all over again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember, Erika, when the story was happening at the time, you know, and some of those women from other situations were allowed to testify, there was some concern over what that might do longer term. That seems to be what's playing out here. What's your read on that?
Yeah, well, it's unfortunate because many of us were willing to stand up in court and tell our story. And those stories don't change. Our truth doesn't change, no matter what happens in a court of law. But it is not easy to revisit those things. Many of us, this happened a long time ago, and revisiting it is incredibly difficult. And we all do it for the most part in order to create change and to do the right thing, to support the women that are taking the stand to convict. Many of us, there's a statute of limitations. There was no opportunity to convict. And so we do it in support. And to me, I was willing to share my story to lend to the predatory story that this particular character has proven. There were over 100 women that came forward with this truth. So it's it's very hard to understand why we were asked to do that by lawyers, and the trial judge allowed it, and now it is the thing that is allowing this particular accusation to be overturned. It's very disconcerting.
Do you have any regrets, Erika, bringing your story forward, given what we're seeing here today?
Absolutely not. And I will continue to speak to anybody who will listen. I speak to young people, I speak to women's groups, I speak to students, and I will use this story to try to help others for the rest of my career, because the one thing that I can do with my truth is to help people stand up for themselves and avoid these situations if possible, and help change the system if I can. So I'll keep talking no matter what.
What do you think it means, bigger picture, for the Me Too movement? Because, we just want to be clear. The court didn't say he's not guilty. They just said, look, the way it was handled, the judge shouldn't have allowed some of that other testimony that wasn't related to the particular case. So, that's we got to be clear there. This is more of a legalistic ruling, that the trial wasn't handled properly, not that Harvey Weinstein is innocent.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it just highlights the work that we have ahead of us. And there is a great deal of it, but there's also many, many of us that are willing to do the work and willing to make the changes so that our sons and daughters are in a position to be safe. And that when they go to court, if they have to talk to the police, if they have to talk to a lawyer, then there will be systems in place and an understanding of how to handle that. I mean, here in Canada in 2014, a judge recommended a 19-year-old keep her knees together. That actually happened in a court of law in my country, and the fact that that is happening in 2014 just shows us how much work we have to do still.
Yeah, and of course, again, Harvey Weinstein is not going to be free. He's still behind bars related to a separate conviction from California.
Yeah, absolutely, he's behind bars where he belongs because he's a criminal.
You talked a little bit about the justice system sort of being unfair to survivors because, this kind of thing goes back to the notion of powerful men with a lot of money, deep pockets, lots of connections, old boys club, able to sort of get away from, their crimes and move past this kind of stuff. Do you think there's been any change, any real change, let's say, in the last 4 years since Harvey Weinstein was convicted, Erika?
I do think there's been change. There are many more legal professionals who are trauma informed. There are many more jurors that understand trauma and memory and who are willing to listen with a little more information. At the end of the day, unfortunately, these big cases and these famous faces do make a lot of noise. But there are many other fights happening at the same time, and I do think that there is progress, and I have to be hopeful because all of these brave people have come forward to tell their truth and are willing to say it again if they have to. As unfair as it might be, we're not going to get tired because it's the right thing to do.
So you're disappointed, but you're not disheartened necessarily on the larger picture here.
Yeah, discouraged, but I'm not tired.